Let's return now to the impact of the climate talks right now in Brazil and the fact that Australia is not going to host COP31. I want to bring in independent MP for Wentworth, Allegra Spender. It looks like it's fair to say that there's disappointment among some within the government, but relief among others that they're not going to be hosting the COP. Is that your sense, Allegra?
Look, I think it is. I'll be honest, I think it is disappointing because why it's disappointing for Australia, but I think it's particularly disappointing for our Pacific neighbours. This was always about Australia and the Pacific hosting this. And the point is that our Pacific neighbours are some of the most vulnerable countries in the world. Climate change for them is an existential threat in some cases, to the continuation of their life on their island. So I think it is really disappointing that this has happened. And I think the question now needs to be, how does Australia, make the most of what concessions have been given to us, to make sure that we still take clean action on climate change, and also make sure that the voices of the Pacific are really heard here.
Can you see why there would be relief among some within the government, though, given the cost and given the coalition has reignited the climate wars, and particularly over net zero, how acutely they're targeting the issue of higher energy prices and will do for many months to come?
I think, I guess the question on this is, do you believe that energy prices are being increased because of action on climate? And I think the evidence is strongly no. So I think the answer is not to walk away from commitment on climate, but actually to call out the misinformation that is being driven by the coalition on this piece. Because yes, energy bills have gone up, and that is of real concern. But the evidence that this is driven by renewable energy or climate action is not there. What we can see in the last 10 years is gas prices on the East Coast have tripled. Griffith University found that if we had put in more coal and gas in the last 20 years, rather than the renewable energy that we put in the last 20 years, that wholesale prices would be 30 to 50% higher than they are right now. And frankly, just in the last 12 months, the cost of gas across the network of energy in New South Wales was $300 per megawatt hour. The cost of solar was $50. So I think what we need to get back to is, if you care about lowering power bills, then you actually need to be leaning into renewable energy and actually a cleaner system, because that's what people are saying. So I think we need to just be honest with the Australian people, and I don't think that the coalition has been honest about what is causing higher power bills, which is the war in Ukraine and unreliable old coal power stations on the whole.
But on the issue of grid scale supply and stability, the coalition has repeatedly pointed to the fact that no other country's been able to do it at the sort of scale we're talking about just on renewables. So we're going to have the stability of gas for many years to come. And isn't the reason gas prices are high is because there's not enough domestic supply that we've exported at all, that in fact we need to up the supply of gas in the short term?
So I think there are a couple of things there. Australia leads the way in solar on our roofs, for example. We're not afraid of being leaders when it suits our natural environment. And we know that a solar panel in Australia creates 2 to 3 times more electricity than it does in other places. So actually, we can be a leader in this area because it suits our natural environment, and that is actually pretty exciting. I do think gas has an important role to play in the transition. It is really important in that peaking kind of place. But to be honest, it's a 3 to 5% role currently in the electricity grid that we have at the moment. So this idea that, and it is very expensive. And if we bring out new gas, the cheaper gas we've already opened up. The new gas, is not going to be cheaper than the old gas that we're going for. So I can't see how that is actually going to drive down power bills. Gas is great for peaking. It is great for when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow. But I don't see anyone saying, real sort of serious energy advocates saying, we want to drive large scale base load generation in Australia on gas because that is too expensive. It is much cheaper to do this on the basis of renewable energy. That is what the this IRO has set us. And many groups across the board. So I think gas has an important role to play. It's important from industrial emissions, and I think that is a real challenge. That is where I do think we should be contemplating East Coast reserves and others. Okay. But it is not going to solve bulk baseload energy on the East Coast. What is going to work is renewables backed up by gas, backed up by storage.
Only a minute left. Wentworth is the seat, one of the seats that people say the Liberals won't win back with their position on climate. Not everyone's loaded. I know it's a lot of wealth in Wentworth, but there are people renting and those that are struggling with power prices too. That might not be the general view, but that's the case. So tell me, what's the feedback you're getting? Are people focusing on the power prices, or what have you heard back in this last week?
What I've heard is people want credible action on climate change, and they see that the coalition currently is worse than Morrison and Dutton in terms of its climate policy, and so that is they're not credible from that point of view. People want to see certainty for business investment because there are a lot of business people here, and they see that has been removed again by this sort of climate war that we are reigniting. And people do also want to see action on bills. People really worry about that, but again, there is no credible plan from the coalition to bring down bills. And so, if the focus for me is like, how do we help renters and apartment dwellers, for example, get the benefits of solar and batteries, for example? Those are some of the people I do worry about. They are really important to this community, but those are the focus areas. But that's really about, if you've got a solar on your roof and a battery in your garage, you have control over your power bills. If you don't have that, you don't. And I think that's where we can actually really help people. And that's, again, where I will be holding the government to account in this space.
Member for Wentworth, Allegra Spender, thanks. Appreciate it. Let's have a look at the weather.
Thanks so much, Kieran.